contestant, Lutos Villanueva. I'm too brown for this. I'm too brown for this. Lutos Villanueva.
Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. I'm originally from Estevan, Saskatchewan. What am I saying? I'm originally from the Philippines. I moved here 3 years ago, and I can still remember my very first winter. That -40 weather that you guys love. I told myself, I'm too brown for this. I'm too brown for winter. I'm going home. Well, my speech tonight is entitled, I'm Too Brown for This. The moments I was too Filipino to understand the Canadian culture. Let us begin. After a 24-hour-long flight, I finally arrived Vancouver. And back in those times, I don't really know much about Canada. I know Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. So, while waiting for my turn to be interviewed by the immigration officer, I decided to look up the map of Estevan, Saskatchewan on my laptop. And I Googled it. The only mistake was I didn't select the first few options. I selected the very bottom. And yes, I saw Regina, I saw Saskatoon, but I didn't see Estevan. So, in the back of my mind, I was like, oh my God, I'm being scammed coming from a third world country where there's lots of illegal recruiters that promise you a job in Canada, but you end up in China. That's how I felt. So finally, the immigration asked me, where are you going? And here I am, I was like a student who knows the answer but won't raise his hand in fear of that might be the wrong answer. So I said, Saskatoon? And he was like, it doesn't say here in your paper. So in the back of my mind, I was like, dude, I just got here. I don't know the place. You probably live here all your life. Why don't you tell me where I'm going instead of you asking me where? You know, I didn't even know if the place existed. So finally I said, Estevan. And lo and behold, my passport got stamped and off I go. And on the way to Regina, I remember my mom packing me the thickest sweaters and jacket that she could find in a hot country, Philippines. She told me, you better wear this before you go outside. Canada is a very cold country. And I was with 3 other brown guys before we landed. I told them, we better suit up, man. It's gonna be cold outside. And they all followed me, so we put our sweaters and a jacket, and I said, we're bundled up, we're good to go. And then, after we said hi and hello to our employers back then, we headed off the parking lot to look for his truck. And boy, I was sweating big time. My armpits were like a faucet that wasn't shut off. Just for you guys to know, we arrived in July of 2000. I didn't know that. I thought Canada was winter all year long. So finally, my employer back then told me we were going for supper, and boy, I was hungry. The very first restaurant that I tried was Boston Pizza. And this server gave me the menu, and I opened it, and I was having a hard time ordering because all the entree seems to have a salad and fries. I was looking for rice. And, you know how the Filipinos love their rice? They eat that breakfast, lunch, and supper, and snacks in between. Finally, I ordered chicken sandwich because nobody goes wrong with that. And I noticed a jersey on the wall, and it says Gretzky. And my boss back then heard me say it, and he said, yeah, Wayne Gretzky. And I was like, is he famous like Michael Jordan in basketball? He said, yeah, don't you know him? And I was like, dude, I don't even know hockey. So, weeks had passed, and I finally arrived Estevan. I'm adjusting with my new life, and I miss the food that I eat. When I was new in Canada, I used to eat seafood, you know, lobsters, oysters, crabs, different kinds of fish. And I befriended an old retired guy who had a farm. So he phoned me one time, hey, why don't you come to my farm on your next days off? And I was like, sure, what's up? Oh, I'm gonna let you try a real Canadian treat. And I was like, what is it? It's prairie oysters. I was like, oysters! When I arrived in his farm, I realized I'm too brown for prairie oysters. Well, back in the Japanese, the oyster will come from the sea. They know it will come from a cow. I didn't know that. Finally, weeks had turned to months, and I befriended a friend named Stacy. And whenever we hang out, when we get hungry, we go to the co-op, which is like 5 houses away from my apartment. So one time I was playing video games, we were hanging out. I was feeling hungry, but I didn't ask her or bother her that let's go to the co-op because, you know, I'm so into my game. And finally she was like, my tummy's aching, I'm gonna go to the co-op to buy some tampons. I was like, good, I could use some tampons. It's like, you're crazy, that's only for girls. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it won't hurt if I try and buy it. That's when I realized tampons were not edible. I've got 3 sisters back at home and a mom. I've never seen a tampon before. I thought it was a bread. So, these I'm too brown moments, I thought I'm just gonna get it with, you know, white people. I didn't know I'm gonna get it with a fellow Asian. I went to this Chinese restaurant at Beanfate, Saskatchewan, and it was dead. As soon as I entered the restaurant, this Chinese lady was like, Filipinese. And I was like, okay, I'm from the Philippines. And she was like, no, 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 Filipinese. And I was like, okay, whatever. I ate my meal, chow mein, and then when I was driving home, I realized China calls their people Chinese, Japan calls their people Japanese, Taiwan calls their people Taiwanese. It's all part of Asia as well as the Philippines, and we call ourselves Filipinos? It doesn't go with the flow. Whoever talking about people smoking crack. So I realized I'm a bona fide Filipinese. So this is Blue Toast, your friendly brown toast. Thank you.